with me, Mara Makwanda. Pupils from primary, secondary, and special needs classrooms will once again be able to attend school on a full time basis. But the question many experts are now asking is, are schools ready? Rotational learning was implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic because some schools in rural areas would not be able to adhere to social distancing regulations. Basic Education Minister Angie Mocheka has been visiting some of these schools in preparation for the full return. The new regulations were gazetted overnight, bringing an end to rotational learning in schools after almost 2 years. Under the new regulations announced by Cabinet, if you test positive for the virus but have no symptoms, you no longer have to isolate. Another major change involves the scrapping of rotational learning in the education sector. To tell us more is SADTU Secretary General, that is the South African Democratic Teachers Union, Nkosana Dolopi. Nkosana, good day, and thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having us. I'm the Deputy General Secretary.
All right, so thank you. Now, how has SADTU welcomed this new ruling, or rather this ruling?
Look, we received this information late last night.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the announcement by the Minister in the Office of the President, he said that the Minister of Basic Education will give us more information in terms of how these regulations or these amendments will find expression at the level of the schools. So before commenting on the details of it, we would want to wait for the Minister of Basic Education to give us the details as per the instruction of Cabinet. It will only be then that we will be able to give a better picture or response on what we think the way forward should be in relation to this. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I get that, but with the situation currently at hand, do you think that the government is ready for to welcome schools and to scrap rotational learning?
Remember, we have always said we are guided by science. That's the first one.
Yes.
And secondly, we are always saying that schools should remain safe areas where learning and teaching should take place. We are always trying to protect both our teachers and also protecting the learners at the very same time. So when any decision is taken, that should be considered. You must consider the safety, the health and safety of the teachers, same health and safety of the learners. But thirdly, we must also make sure that our learners don't lose out. In the recent past, we received some research information with some indication that since the last 2 years of COVID, we have seen, especially the learners in the township schools, in the rural schools, lagging behind. They are losing out in terms of curriculum, in terms of learning and progressing. So we are saying those are the areas that ought to be considered when the minister will be looking at the details and announcing them to the country, and we will be following through as she will be making those announcements tomorrow. We would not want our children to remain behind. You would remember the schools, the learners from the affluent schools were not negatively affected by this rotational timetable thing because they could quickly move to online interface. They could use other platforms that were available, and their learners continued learning uninterrupted. Whereas the learners of those who don't have network, the learners of the poor, the learners of parents who can't afford to buy data, were affected negatively by this whole rotational basis. So all those factors will have to be considered by the minister when she presents them the details of how these amendments will work at the level of the schools.
The Basic Education Minister has been visiting some of these schools in preparation for the full return. So after what you've just mentioned, and everything, it's all systems go, is it still a good idea to go ahead and have um, probably 45 to 60 kids in one class?
Look, like I said, or but we always say that
Mm-hmm.
the issue of overcrowding is not as a result of COVID.
Yes.
We are always saying that COVID just amplified our voice around our demand that we need to address the current provision of teachers to our school, the current post-provisional model. It's not good. So we have always raised the issue of that we need to reduce the number of the
Mm-hmm.
learners in our classroom. It's not a COVID issue, it's an educational issue. Children can't learn properly in
Mm-hmm.
overcrowded classes. Teachers can't do their work properly. They can't engage learners individually. They can't reach out and assist these learners properly in overcrowded classes. So COVID did not introduce overcrowded classes. Like I'm saying, COVID just amplified the voice of all of us who were campaigning against overcrowded classes for many, many years before this pandemic came. So even the issue of infrastructure, it's not something that came as a result of COVID. It's something that we have always been speaking about. It's just that maybe as deadly as COVID is, as painful as it is, but it amplified our voice in terms of the question of the provision of proper infrastructure at our schools, more especially in the townships and
Mm-hmm.
in the rural schools. Ablution facilities like toilets, the question of water, is not something that came as a result of COVID. It's something that we have always campaigned about, even before COVID came. So, like I'm saying, maybe COVID assisted us to amplify, to tell those who are in power that all schools ought to have water. It's a matter of hygiene, it's a matter of health. Those ought to be attended to. Question of washing of hands, not something that came as a result of COVID. These are things that we have always raised in society, that hygiene is important at our
Mm-hmm.
schools. The health of our children is important at our schools. So, yeah, we'll continue raising them, and we just hope even post this, the question of overcrowded schools, classes ought to be attended to. The question of the training and appointment of more teachers, more especially at our rural schools, our township schools, it's something to be attended to. The question of building proper schools in the township and rural schools, it's something that we will have to attend to even beyond COVID and so on.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Nkosana Dolopi. I guess we will catch up with you once again once we have received more information from those in power regarding the rotational learning, etc., and the cabinet changes that we have just received. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Right, that was the Deputy Secretary General of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, Nkosana Dolopi, giving us some feedback on the Cabinet's approval for changes to adjusted alert level 1. And one of those changes is that there will be a return to daily classes. But obviously, the question on hand on everybody's mind is overcrowded schools. And overcrowded schools are, well, basically the townships and rural areas are the most affected by overcrowding. And there's been an article that was published. If you'd like some more, you can also go to at Presidency ZA's Twitter page to find out more about the new changes. A special cabinet meeting was held yesterday, the 31st of January 2022, and has approved changes to the adjusted level 1 COVID-19 regulations. Those who test positive with no symptoms do not have to isolate. If you test positive with symptoms, the isolation period has been reduced from 10 days to 7. Contacts do not have to isolate unless they develop symptoms. The rationale for these amendments is informed by the proportion of people with immunity to COVID-19, which has risen substantially, exceeding 60 to 80% in several sero surveys. Cabinet also reviewed the resumption of schooling to full-time learning in all schools, which is primary, secondary, and special needs, will return to daily attendance. The regulatory provision for social distancing of 1 meter for learners in schools has also been removed. The Minister of Basic Ed and the Ministers of Health and Basic Education will, in the coming days, issue directives reflecting on this new approach. Now, with this COVID-19 regulations being relaxed, what does this mean for those people who have not been vaccinated, especially when it comes to their employment? Because we have seen how some people decided or refused to get vaccinated and unfortunately lost their jobs and also lost their cases at the CCMA. So that is another issue there. That should be discussed. But overcrowding is something that has always been there. And as Nkosana just mentioned, that in rural and township schools, they fell behind because of the situations of overcrowding. And COVID-19 just amplified their need of having better infrastructure, better resources for rural and township schools. So our Minister of Basic Education has a lot to do in terms of this overcrowding situation that we face. It is 12:46. You're listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Stellar Media. We will